Welcome to the Lemons and Pineapples podcast, the self-development podcast for women who want more. I'm your host, Emma O'Brien. I'm a no-nonsense life coach, a seasoned entrepreneur, photographer, rescue dog mum, and women's empowerment champion. Each week, I share self-development strategies, amazing guest interviews, and uplifting conversations that will help you up-level all areas of your life. Let's dive in. Hi, folks. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 10 of the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. Today, my guest is Esther Avant, and we're talking about the 3 C's of success when it comes to health and nutrition. First, a bit about my guest. Esther is a health industry veteran with over 18 years of experience in fitness, nutrition, and wellness-related roles. She's known for making exercise and nutrition simple and helping her clients address the root issues that have been standing between them and results that last. Her Gone for Good framework has helped hundreds of women lose weight for the last time and start living their healthiest, happiest, most confident lives. Her business, EA Coaching, provides full spectrum health and lifestyle coaching through a combination of exercise, nutrition, lifestyle, and mindset strategies. Esther is also a boy mum and a Navy wife who has traveled and lived all over the world whilst running her EA coaching business. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's funny hearing someone read your own bio.
I know, it's quite nice, isn't it? Like, oh, I'm really reminded how brilliant you are. And I think we all need that reminder sometimes. We're talking about 3 things today that influence the achievement of health goals, as well as the power of creating good habits when you're working towards a health goal. And I think most women know what they need to do when it comes to health and fitness and weight loss goals. What goes wrong?
That's the $1 million question. And what's interesting is that's generally not the question that people ask. We tend to just beat up on ourselves. I know what to do. I'm just not doing it. It's because I'm lazy. I'm undisciplined. I don't have any motivation. We blame a personal shortcoming for something which is really just having a human brain. Everybody experiences the kind of catch-22 of knowing the steps, but not doing them or not doing them regularly. So the real question is to figure out why not. So rather than making that statement as sort of a dead end, actually do scoping and get to the root of it. So I'll tell you, I'll skip some steps for you because I've been doing this for a long time. I've helped thousands of people, and it all boils down to the same couple of things. First and foremost, we try to do too much at once. Part of the problem with knowing what to do is that we do have like the bones of what to do. And then we have a lot of kind of stuff. The bones have a lot of luggage of stuff that we're telling ourselves we have to do that isn't actually very impactful. But by kind of looking at all as a lump, it's overwhelming. And we feel like, okay, well, if that's what it takes, if I have to do, A through Z, and I can't do it all right now, I better not start. Or we try to do it, we try to do it all. And, maybe we're good for a couple of weeks and then something happens, and our consistency plummets, some life thing gets in the way and we start dropping balls left and right. We get frustrated. We throw in the towel altogether. So one of the main reasons that we know what to do, but don't actually do it is that we, rather than taking this sort of gradual stepwise ladder-like approach, we just try to do it all. And we have that kind of toggling of starts and stops. Another reason that knowing what to do isn't just enough is that often we have these unrealistic expectations about what our results will look like if we're doing those things. And that happens from all sorts of places. We find anchors that we tell ourselves, this is realistic. This is gonna date me, but years ago, probably almost 20 years ago, there's a show in the US, I'm sure it was known elsewhere, The Biggest Loser. And basically people would put their entire lives on pause. They would go live at this ranch and they were dropping, tens of pounds a week. So at that time, there were a lot of people who were seeing the show and thinking, okay, well, I'm not exercising 6 hours a day. I don't have my diet controlled by a dietitian, but I could probably lose 5 pounds a week. and thinking that was a realistic goal. And what's actually realistic and healthy is more like a pound or two. So when you are expecting a really big loss every week or, major progress in whatever direction you're trying to go, and you don't get it, rather than taking a step back and thinking, okay, how do I recalibrate my expectations? We just tell ourselves either it's not working, I need to do something else, or if I'm working so hard and I'm not getting anything out of it, why bother? I might as well quit. Or we, totally change tack, we give up, etc. So those two things I think are some of the most common reasons that we know what to do, but don't do it consistently enough. And then I'd say the third is just kind of like the general lifestyle stuff where we're not in the habit of making our own needs a priority. So when we're confronted with needing to, it feels uncomfortable. And we just sort of default to what we've always done, which is, yes, I can do that for you. Yes, I can do that for you. I'll take whatever's left, and there's nothing left. I also lump things like time management into this, where a big factor is social media. I recently took social media off my phone, and boy, do I have more time on my hands. Things like that, where we tell ourselves I don't have time, but we're not actually auditing our time to see where is it going and how could I find it for the stuff that's important. So a lot of that sort of day-to-day stuff where it's not directly related to exercise, not directly related to nutrition, it's the other lifestyle factors that will make it easier to do those things. That needs to be addressed first. And then you find that the more specific health related stuff is a lot easier to do because you've kind of set that foundation for it.
Yeah, so much in there and so much good advice that translates through any goal that you've got. I've just been having a conversation with a coaching client this morning, and I'm a life coach, so different type of coaching to you, but the same principles apply. And she had set a goal for creating a side business really to earn a bit of extra money, and she's done nothing about it, hence then hiring me. And we made the steps so small that she could do it. And we got on a call today and she said, I've started, and it feels so good to have started. But she said to me, it's funny, we simplified it working together so much that it almost seemed like it was too simple. And she said, I had a really big idea in my head of what it should have looked like and what it should be like, which was what was overwhelming her and stopping her from doing it. But in breaking it down to smaller steps, and like you've said, making it manageable and actually looking at what's realistic in terms of expectations. I'm sitting here looking at your beautiful toned arms, and again, that's something. I got married in April, and I'm very slender, but I was like, do you know what? I've got this wedding dress, and these arms need to be tightened up a little bit here. My mother, who is 72, has the most fantastic arms because she exercises every day. So she created me what we called the arms like Madonna regime that I procrastinated on. And then I was like, the month before the wedding, damn it, I really need to get on with this. And you know what? Even doing that exercise routine 3 or 4 times a week did not give me arms like yours, because arms like yours, no, but it's weight training, it's consistent weight training. It's not going to appear in a month. It's not going to happen. It's months of training to get super toned and look like someone who's on the cover of Women's Fitness magazine. And I think you're so right. It's about managing where you are. Is it realistic to get to a six pack and super toned if you've only really got 3 hours a week to do exercise? Probably not.
Yep, you're exactly right. I read a personal development book once. I wish I could remember what it was called so I could credit it, but it was talking about goals and how if you have fallen short of a goal that you set, or if you can, sort of project out and see that you are likely to, you have three options. Number one, you can change the goal. Maybe your falling short is indicative of you not actually caring that much. I see that a lot with women who have just perpetually said, I want to lose, 10 pounds, where it's more vanity weight. It's almost because, and I used to say this when I was first started as a personal trainer, my goal was always like, I'll lose 5 pounds and tone up. And I just probably picked it up through, kind of diet culture and feeling like, oh, women are supposed to say they want to lose weight. So maybe you realize, yeah, part of why I'm not doing this stuff is because I don't I'm not actually that motivated by the goal. Okay, so number one, you can change the goal. Number two, you can change the timeline. All these things are pretty arbitrary. We say, I set this business goal, I want to reach this revenue by this date. You just pick that out of a hat. You can extend that. You can, if you say I want to lose 10 pounds by my birthday or, 50 pounds by the end of the year, and you're tracking, behind that. Okay, so how about by February or March? The point is you'll still reach the goal. It'll just take a little longer. The third option is that you can change your approach. And what I think is interesting is this is what a lot of people default to with their health goals is instead of doing kind of the mental work of, do I really care about this? Why is it important to me? Maybe if I were more in tune with that, I'd be more committed. We don't even address that the goal could change. We don't want it to take longer because we just want to be there already. So we tend to default to, all right, I need to change things up. I need to do more. I need to do something more intense. I need to switch focus. And when it comes to health and weight loss, really the last, if you're taking a healthy approach in the first place, the last thing you want to change is the approach. You really do want to settle into what you were saying, which is that results are going to take longer than you want them to, and you think they should come. Most people that you see looking really fit have been doing it for a really long time. So it's less about what you can accomplish this week or this month, and more about how do I get myself into a headspace where I am thinking more about what I can accomplish in the next 6 months, in the next year, in the next 3 years, and recognize that if I'm committed to my health, then the results are going to come. And how do I create that foundation so that regardless of motivation or discipline or those things, I'm showing up the way I need to, and I'm taking pride in the results that are really hard earned.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also celebrating the small wins along the way rather than, I think, beating yourself up for what you haven't done. If your goal is to exercise 5 days a week and you manage three, well, you manage three. Three is better than none, and it's two less than five. So your gap is two. So the following week, can you do four? And then can you do five? I think that's it. You're right. It's about managing expectations and doing something rather than doing nothing. I heard, I think it was Jack Cornfield was talking about this principle of looking at the gap. So even if your goal was to lose 10 pounds and you lost eight, the gap is two. You're 8 pounds closer to the goal than you were when you hadn't lost anything. And I think it's just reframing that and reframing failure. And I love what you shared at the beginning, and it's been something I've been talking about a lot recently, is failure is just feedback. Failure, I say failure in inverted commas, because I think it's a word we actually need to remove from language when it comes to goals, and especially things like weight loss and health goals, is, okay, so it didn't quite work out according to plan. What did work? What didn't work? Why didn't it work? And if it's a time thing, like you've said, and time management is a huge part of this, if your aim was to fit 5 workouts in and you only did 3, why did you miss 2? How much time do you need to find to add 2 in? And can you stop scrolling on your phone? Because we all know 45 minutes can disappear like that when you're scrolling, and you could have done a 45-minute workout. And it's just reevaluating how you use your time. And you've also said how important the goal is to you, because if it doesn't really matter, like you've said, you're not really going to go after it. How do you make it matter? So I don't know whether, I mean, here's me jumping 10 steps ahead, but if you were aiming for your summer bikini body, do you need to book a holiday to give yourself a deadline for it? Because I had a wedding and I was like, oh crap, I need to get lifting some weights and doing something if I want these arms to look better than they do now. And really, ideally, I should have been doing it 6 months before the wedding, but I didn't, because it doesn't matter that much to me. So yeah, talk to us a little bit about your 3 C's of success, because this is really the fundamentals of the program you teach and how you coach. And I think this is a really interesting piece of information for people.
Yeah, so we've already kind of hinted at them. So what I found is that in order to really be successful at not just your health goal, but really any goal that you want to achieve, you need three C's. The first we've been talking about is kind of the most obvious for people is consistency. We all know that if we're not day in and day out doing the things, most of the time, we're not gonna see the results. So that's number one. The second one is commitment, which we also touched on. It's like, why does this goal matter to you? What difference does it make whether or not you achieve it? And a lot of times we just kind of stick to surface level and we focus on, the aesthetic of like, oh, I just want my clothes to fit more comfortably. And it's like, okay, well, why does that really matter? It's that kind of five whys exercise that I'm sure you're familiar with, and you sound kind of like an annoying toddler. Why? But it helps you dig deeper. And what you really usually end up finding is that it's more about how you feel about yourself, your self-esteem, your energy throughout the day, wanting to be healthy and have a long, independent life. So when we stop at, I just want my clothes to fit, we're selling ourselves short as far as commitment goes. Because if you really get to the root of the emotional reason of why you need to accomplish the goal, it's a heck of a lot easier to stay committed to the goal, which therefore is going to make you more consistent. You're not always going to want to do the things, but when you know why the goal is so important and you're committed to it, it's a lot easier to just make yourself show up anyway. The third C, I think, is the one that is most often overlooked, and that is confidence. And keep in mind that the three C's are not like a linear thing. It's not first you do consistency, then you do commitment. They're all interconnected. Where confidence comes in is that at the end of the day, if you don't believe that it's possible for you to achieve the goal that you're after, it's not. And I don't say that to make it seem like you need to become confident before you start, because the confidence comes from the consistency, from the commitment, from taking action, doing the things, like you said, taking that feedback and introspecting and asking yourself. You nailed a skill I call compassionate ownership, which is reflecting back and like, wait, what happened? Why did I miss those two workouts? Not to beat yourself up, not to make it a big thing, but to learn and to say, okay, now that I'm aware that, this is an issue or that I'm spending too much time on my phone, what am I going to do differently? That's where you're taking ownership of. It's up to me to make this change. So how am I going to do it? And that's where confidence comes from setting those small goals you mentioned, and from, the weeks you don't hit them, scaling them back until you do, increasing a little bit until you have trained yourself to set goals that are realistic, to follow through, and ultimately to be someone who does what she says she's going to do. That's where confidence comes from. So yes, you do need a little bit of confidence just to start, because if you truly thought it was impossible, if I'm not going to bother like seeing if I can launch myself off my deck and start to fly, because I don't believe that that's possible. So there needs to be like a little kernel of it. And that's where working with a life coach or a health coach can come in, is you can borrow someone else's belief in you and their confidence in you. Somebody who just wholeheartedly is like, of course this is possible. If you don't believe it, borrow mine, and you start to develop it. So you do need a little bit of belief to start, but really you build it as you're going. And one of, I think, the most rewarding things as a coach, and you may have experienced this also, is when your clients sort of turn that corner to knowing that their success is inevitable. They might not be there yet. They might still be wanting it to be faster, but they've sort of, that light has switched on where they're just like, okay, look, I'm doing it. I have some evidence that this is working, and it's because of what I'm doing. And if it doesn't feel unsustainable, I think I can do this. And then it's just like they sort of turn up the effort, and it really does become possible. So consistency, commitment, confidence are the three C's you need to accomplish any goal.
Yeah, and I think that's just so brilliant. And confidence, like you've said, comes from starting. You need to start, and you need to have your why of why you're doing something. And like I watched my client today who when we had the coaching session, and she said, I've actually done it. I've done what we discussed. And you could see she's like, I've actually stepped up for myself and done it. I can keep going with it. And you have to just sometimes get over that hurdle of feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And like you said, confidence comes from taking action. When you've stepped up for yourself each day and you've done it and you've committed to it, you can start to see, actually, I can get up a little bit earlier to get a workout in, or I can, make a bit of time sometime in the day to do it. And after 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to start to feel better. And so it builds. But that's it. It comes from like you've said, consistency. And I know you've got a specific framework for developing consistent habits, because obviously consistency really is a habit. Doing a workout each day is a habit. Stepping up for yourself is a habit. Talk to me a little bit more about your framework for helping clients create consistent habits in their lives.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So there's three components to this as well. The first, and we've all sort of we've touched on all of them. The first is what I call learning and mastering the big rock habits. So that goes back to what we talked about very early on, how there's some stuff that makes a big difference and there's some stuff that makes a tiny difference, and we tend to give them all equal weight. So what can really help build consistency is to get rid of all the noise. Just stop stressing about the stuff that is pretty inconsequential, like, what time you eat dinner, or, should you count net carbs and things like that. And you just start focusing on the things that give you the most bang for your buck: your strength training, your walking, your protein intake, your fiber intake, etc. When you focus more on those, you have more energy to devote to them, which means they'll start to feel easier more quickly, which means it'll be easier to be consistent without it taking a ton of effort. So that's first and foremost. And when you are getting started, or when you're trying to reestablish or develop a new habit, I recommend just a basic tracker. I have one that we'll put in the show notes. You can get it at esteraavant.com/habits. It just is a paper calendar that you print off, put on your fridge, and you put a little check mark or a smiley face or a sticker. Each day you do the things to, number one, see those small efforts adding up. Once you get kind of that streak going, you want to keep doing more, but also for you to highlight where your consistency is lacking. You might see that, okay, for the last 3 weeks, I got my stickers Monday through Friday, not a sticker to be found over the weekend. That's good information for you to then figure out, okay, what needs to change for weekends. So that's first and foremost, is the exercise, nutrition, big rocks, keeping it simple with what you're trying to do. The second is having some form of support, accountability, guidance, etc. This can be working with a coach, and in a program like ours, we have the built-in community, we have all of that kind of in one. It may be working with an in-person trainer, or going to a group exercise class, or this I think is often doesn't work as well as people would like, but some sort of accountability partner, a friend or somebody, just some way, some external accountability, so that you have a little bit of extra incentive to do the things. Ultimately, you do want to build that intrinsic motivation where you don't need somebody looking over your shoulder to do the stuff. But in the beginning, when you're developing the habits, it's super helpful to have somebody go through those exercises with you and say, okay, here's the goals we set. How did it go? What went well? Let's celebrate that. What didn't? Let's work on that, so that you can develop the habits more quickly. And then the third component is what we touched on, the compassionate ownership, the other kind of skills and tools that we need in order for this stuff to be easy. So one of those is to not oscillate between this like all or nothing, either I failed or I'm on top of the world. We just kind of settle into the middle, which is like, this stuff is going to coexist. There's going to be some stuff we do well, some stuff we don't do well. We need to be able to take it in stride and learn from it. This is also where we do kind of the deeper work of looking at our past and understanding how is that impacting our habits right now and how we feel about ourselves. So those three things I find, we've got sort of the surface level with what the habits are. That's what most people focus on. We've got or I guess that's above the surface. We've got right at the surface is the accountability. Most people recognize I'm better when somebody's, holding my hand or on my team. What most people don't really focus on is what's beneath the surface, which is kind of all the other stuff that can make or break this. And this is what we talked about with, boundaries, time management, self-worth, all of that stuff is playing a role in our ability to be consistent and therefore reach our goals. So when you're not doing that work, you're really kind of doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, I should love me a bit of mindset. Really, as a coach, I think that is the fundamentals of the work you do with a client, because you can set goals, you can make an action plan, but fundamentally, if underneath it you don't believe you can do it, have got limiting beliefs that are holding you back, you have to go through the messy middle to understand that, unpack it and repack it to be able to reach a goal. I think, and I'm really glad you brought that up, because you can have all of the habits in the world, you can have habit trackers, you can have a coach, you can have accountability, but if underneath it you've not done the inner work, nothing really changes. It all begins in here. And I think that's what for me is so exciting about coaching, is helping people get to that. I'll often have people who come to me for coaching about one thing, and then it morphs into something completely different when you start to sort of peel the layers back. And actually the problem isn't the problem at all. It's a symptom of something else that really deeply needs to be dealt with. And once that starts shifting, everything else becomes much, much easier. So, thank you for bringing that up. And the other thing is, you don't have to walk a journey like this alone. It's hard, especially for people if they've got a big weight loss goal or a big fitness goal. It's really difficult to motivate yourself and do it on your own. But if you're paying somebody, you're spending money. Coaching is an investment. It's not a cheap exercise. You're betting on yourself there. And I think that's where the big power of it comes in, is you spending this money. So if I've spent the money, I'm going to show up. I'm going to do the work. And that in itself, I think, can be the biggest motivator for people sometimes.
Absolutely. There's so much good stuff in there. We use the term messy middle as well, because that it's really about just kind of settling in there and recognizing that, like, yeah, we're used to extremes, and most of the stuff happens in the messy middle, which is like, most of your workouts are going to be decent. You're going to have some that feel terrible, some that are amazing. Most of the time, it just, you showed up, you did your best, you moved on, and getting used to that, getting used to the day to day, and how to change how you show up in your day to day is really what it's all about.
What is one piece of advice you can give to someone who's listening, who maybe has a weight goal or a big health goal, and they need to make some big changes, and it might be something they've been wanting to do for a really long time and they've just never quite got there? What could you say to that person to help them get themselves into action?
That's such a good question. The number one thing I would want you to remember is that all you have to do is start. And it doesn't need to be this big declaration. It doesn't need to be posting in your social media saying, starting Monday, I'm, going full carnivore, or anything drastic. In fact, that is the opposite of what you should do. I think there's so much power in exactly what you said earlier, Emma, which is breaking goals down to really, really small pieces. Yes, pieces that feel inconsequential, that you're just like, come on, that's not really going to get me there. Individually, they're not. You waking up and drinking a glass of water before you have your coffee is not going to help you lose 100 pounds. But what it's going to do is help start repairing your reputation with yourself, where you, over time, a lot of us have chipped away at that reputation, that self-trust, by saying things and setting goals that we then don't follow through on. And it just trains us to feel like, no, it doesn't matter what I say. I'm not going to do it anyway. That's a terrible place to be. Think about if you had any other person in your life where you're just like, oh yeah, they're unreliable. I can't ask them to pick me up from the airport because they probably won't. Yeah, we would not want those people in our lives. But when it comes to just us, we, for some reason, think it's okay. So the number one thing to do that will make you more successful is to repair that reputation. And the way you do that is by giving yourself small opportunities to prove yourself trustworthy. So it's not about the water. It's not about, pacing around your living room until you hit 10,000 steps. It's about setting a goal and then doing it solely because you said you would. So when you start small, there's just fewer ways to talk yourself out of it. When you're like, oh, it's just a glass of water. It's just 5 minutes. It's just one email, whatever. Okay, fine. I'll just do it. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference, but I'll just do it because it's not that big a deal. What happens when you do that is you build some confidence. You get some momentum. You feel good, just like your client was experiencing. Like, I did what I said I was going to do. I'm starting to see, as you take a step forward, it's like the next step in the path lights up, and you realize, okay, I can do another thing. I can keep going from here. So just start. Whatever it is that you've been putting off, don't make it a big deal. Just think of one thing. Brain dump a whole list of like, what are all the things I could do that would be a little bit healthier than what I do? Pick one, start with it, celebrate the hell out of it, and then do it again. And then do another thing when you feel ready. That's how you'll get there. Yeah, it might take longer than you'd like. Surprise, it's going to take longer than you'd like, no matter what you do. So you can't snap your fingers and be there. So just start today and do. I think, Emma, you touched on such a good point about celebrating along the way. I actually just interviewed a celebration coach for my podcast who was talking about how we tend to under celebrate. We think we have to wait until we accomplish the goal to celebrate, and how much more pleasant and actually how much more successful we'll be if we celebrate along the way. So it doesn't matter how small it is. You don't need to, throw yourself a parade because you drank the water, but like pat yourself on the back, acknowledge that this is a win, and go from there. So I guess all of that in a nutshell is just start. Pick something small and start, and then just keep going.
Yeah, just excellent advice. And I really, really like what you shared about repairing your reputation with yourself and likening it to how would you treat a person who constantly let you down? You'd kick them to the curb and you'd get rid of them. And you can't do that to yourself. But also, you wouldn't tolerate someone treating you like that. So why do you tolerate treating yourself like that? So I think that'll be a big light bulb moment for a lot of people listening to this. So folks, if you have we've got to the end of this here and you want, I would go back with a notebook here because there is a stack of amazing information. Esther, thank you very, very much for all of your insights today. We're going to pop the link to your free habit tracker. I'm going to put that in the show notes so people can go and download that, put it on the fridge and get started. What else is coming up for you this year?
Thank you for asking. I have a book coming out, TBD. Hopefully, I think you said this will come out in August, hopefully September, October-ish. I'm waiting to hear back from the publisher on the exact release date. It's called To Your Health, A Lifestyle of Health, Happiness, and Confidence, and it is the opposite of a nutshell of my coaching philosophy. It's exactly what I do in my coaching program in book form, so you can get all the nitty-gritty and start applying it yourself. Since I don't know exactly when it's coming out, the best way to find out that information is go get the habit tracker. You'll get on my email list. I will absolutely send an email or two when it comes out. So if you're interested in that, that would be the best way. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram and connect with me there. And I'm happy to pass along the information when I have it.
Amazing. And congratulations on having a book out. I mean, that's no mean feat. And it sounds like it's going to be a brilliant read. Esther, just share where people can find you on your website and where they can connect with you on socials, please. I'll put the links in the show notes, but if you can just tell people where they can get you in case they're just listening.
Perfect. Yeah, my website is esteravant.com. I'm pretty simple. It's Esther Avant on both Facebook and Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm trying to get more involved there. So if you're on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect there. And you can also find those in from my website.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'll pop those in the show notes. This has been a really amazing, insightful and value-packed conversation. So thank you very, very much. It was really, really lovely to connect with you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening, folks. If you've enjoyed this episode, come over and say hi and let me know on Instagram. It's at Emma O'Brien Coach. And you can also pop me a text message straight on the podcast at the top of the show notes as well. Thank you for being with me, and I will see you same time next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, please leave me a 5-star rating and a review, and make sure you share this episode with a friend who you know will also enjoy it. I'd love to connect with you on Instagram. Please drop me a DM and say hi at Emma O'Brien Coach. And for more information about coaching with me, please head to my website, which is emmaobrien.coach.com.